devices for the Bahamas, that we can verify the amount of explosive that has been brought into the country, the amount that is still unused, and then begin to allow us to compare what they say they have to what they say they have used in their blast, to authenticate that they are doing what they say they're doing other than their paper reports.
The short answer is yes. But if the problem is as you're implying, what do you expect to find?
Well, I expect to find that if you said you did 100 blasts using 50 pounds of dynamite each, and you brought in enough to do 300 blasts, and I do an inventory count, and based on the numbers that you stated, then you should have done 150 blasts. So that means either you use more dynamite than you said you did, or 50 set of dynamite is missing. And it's a scary thought. If it is missing, then it's running around the country along with the guns. I just like to rule it out.
Just regulate it. Just regulate it. People, let's not get too carried away, okay? Your customs officer, Claire Wood, comes in. It's your customs officer who Claire Wood comes in. One of you will be hired to be that inspector who counts it and verifies it. Who in here is prepared to swear to me that every customs officer tells the truth and every inspector does his job honestly? Who? So be careful of what you ask.
No, let me clarify this.
I understand what you're asking,
this.
but
Even if the customs officer doesn't count it correctly, the place they brought it from, the United States, they keep account of it.
So they don't lie?
No.
They don't export deficient material?
No, but let me explain something, sir. It's a very simple process. If the count comes out okay, I am wrong, and
I'm not saying you're wrong.
I'm just saying, but what I'm saying is this. Many times, I say I use 2 spoons of sugar when I really use 3. Okay? So unless you have a means of quantifying that, okay, it isn't a matter of whether it came in. Yes, they account it. There is some agencies that are very concerned, and that's one of the reasons why we sign these agreements for the inspection of the containers and such to control explosive devices that is moved around the world.
So okay? All I'm saying, right, you're the one with diabetes, you're the one lying to yourself about 2 or 3.
No, but what I'm saying is this.
You're the one. But that's what people do.
No, but see, right.
Can't protect you from
what I'm
that.
saying is this. There comes the point of liability. If they're saying they're using 5 pounds of dynamite and presenting us to a measurement that reflects they use 5 and they usually use 7, all I'm saying is, me personally, I would like a count as to what is there.
And I'm suggesting to you that it can be done. But your premise is based on the fact that somebody is sneaking or lying.
No, my premise is this, Minister, that the blast level for which they're saying is not correct. That's my premise, and I'd like to be proven wrong.
Mr. Russell, no more questions? 1 second, Mr. Williams.
It seems as if I'm experiencing deja vu here. We've been here before, the last minister, and we were waiting for an assessment. Government change, minister change, and we're here again. Still waiting. I want to get to the bottom line. And I am hoping, I understand that you're waiting for an assessment, okay? And then you're going to make your evaluation. I am hoping that something you have heard here tonight will convince you to vote against Bahama Rock moving across the highway when the time comes. And I am hoping to see you again and not disappear like, it's been happening before. Okay, so your opening remarks, I understood that there was basically nothing that could happen tonight, just hearing the concerns. So we've been going on, and I think you've heard enough to make your final decision when the time comes. Like I said, I hope that when it does come, you would vote against Bahama Rock moving across the highway. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton?
Every developed country, and 3 of them that I've had an opportunity to work with very closely, has taken the environment very serious. So serious that they've enacted and set up a bureau that is not controlled by any one government body, but a bureau whose only responsibility is the protection of the environment. The United States has the EPA. I've worked all across the United States with the EPA. The EPA has the power to do many things that the President of the United States can't. As long as they can prove that it's a detriment to the country, they move on it, and that's why it can be said that the United States is one of the more safer environmentally protected areas. Here in the Bahamas, especially in Grand Bahama, the Hawks Peak Women has been good to both of us, those people who made money and also the Bahamas. But one thing we have to be very mindful about is the protection of our environment. Now there exists in the Port Authority an entity, an environmental entity, and I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it says that they do their own permitting, they do their own regulation, they have their own way of doing things. I don't know how to report to the government, but I say this. This land still belongs to us as the Bahamians. While we are renting or leasing it to them, it is our responsibility to ensure that this land remains free and clear and clean for our great-grandchildren. And the only way we can do that is if we set an entity above the Port Authority as far as environment is concerned and said, no, this is what we want to have done. And unless we are able to do that and look out for our concerns, we will be here, yes, here, going around in circles again because we are not controlling our environmental destiny. The gentleman here made a very important point which many of us fail to see. If we know the amount of explosive coming into the country and there's a regulator, he can at some point in time make it a point to view the amount of explosive there, quantify it, check each explosion to ensure that what they say they are doing is correct. Not rely on what they say they are doing. And in that way, we'll have much more control of our environmental destiny.
Mr. Williams, question? 1 second, as soon as he's done, then you can.
Like the gentleman said, I think the whole purpose of his statement was the fact that we are convinced that Bahama Rock has not been truthful from the beginning. They have lied on what their readings are. They have lied on how much explosive they're using. They have lied on whether or not they found caves in the area and all of this other stuff. They have not been very truthful on any of those matters. They often quote the U.S. Bureau of Mines as the standard, and they say that they're well below industry standard. If we are going to have any sort of blasting done in the Bahamas, and I think we are, whether Bahama Rock is approved or not, to some degree we may have some blasting somewhere. And if we're going to have any sort of blasting done, I think we need to develop our own standards because we are definitely unique. And we don't need to be using standards that were developed in places that are completely different with a completely different makeup, and they're not on a table, they're not limestone, they're not. So we don't need to be using those standards. We need standards that are developed, that are unique to us because we are indeed unique.
Exclusively Bahamian.
Question?
My comments were basically respond to what the minister said. I want to find out because I work for the Port Authority, and a lot of times we are concerned about our environment or an area, and because we're not directly living there, people tend to think you have no reason to. But I'm a citizen of the Grand Bahama and the Bahamas, so I think my concern for the island, whether it's in Freeport or Mile Rock, is warranted. But you mentioned something just now about proof, when the gentleman mentioned the explosive. And you said with BEC, they damage, we know their power hikes damage on properties, but proving it. And here in Grand Bahama too, the Port Authority, everybody here could probably say that they had an appliance or some damage by power surge.
15 computers.
We elect a number of men and women to protect our interests every 5 years. And I have a problem when a minister says to me, knowing these things happen, and there's nothing to protect the Bahamian people by saying, prove it. I think we need to come up with some other